introduce you once we get everybody in. So good afternoon, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. We're going to give it a couple seconds for you guys to get filed in. We're excited that you chose to spend an hour with us this afternoon. So we're already up close to 50, and we've got plenty more that have registered that are logging in. All right, excellent. So good afternoon, everyone. As you get settled in here, hopefully you're able to see us and hear us. So we'll give it just another moment, and then I'll introduce our presenter for today. All right, we're getting close to 100 now. Plenty of people coming in.
Stacey, we've got to wait for everybody to finish the previous webinar they were on so they can get across to this one.
It's so funny.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I've definitely noticed that people forget that even with virtual meetings, we need a couple minutes to get a glass of water or a refill of our coffee or go pet the dog.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, I'll go ahead and get started here. So good afternoon. My name is Stacey Schroeder, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's virtual learning event on adaptability and leading change. This Zoom webinar is being recorded for archiving, so all participants have come in muted. However, you do have the ability and are encouraged to communicate at any time by submitting questions using the chat or the Q&A functions in Zoom. If you have any connection issues, please exit the session and log back in using the same link. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. All registered attendees will receive a copy of the recording, and it will be archived behind the members only area of the Women in Manufacturing website. Today's webinar is hosted by Women in Manufacturing. WiM is a national trade association that encourages the engagement of women who have chosen a career in the manufacturing industry. The association supports a network of more than 3,700 individuals from more than 900 companies. Our webinar presenter today is Graeme Codrington. Graeme is an internationally recognized futurist, specializing in the future of work. He helps organizations understand the forces that will shape our lives in the next 10 years and how we can respond in order to confidently stay ahead of change. For the past 2 decades, he has worked with some of the world's most recognized brands, traveling to over 80 countries in total and speaking to around 100,000 people every year. He's the author of 5 best-selling books and on faculty at 5 top global business schools. I will say that he's got a couple of videos he's using today, so when we get to that point, just turn your audio up all the way to hear it. And with that, please join me in welcoming Graeme. Take it away.
Thanks, Stacey, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. It's great to be with you. I'm wanting to try and make this session a little bit interactive. I'm not sharing my screen. As you can see, I've got my slides behind me. If you would prefer to have a copy of my slides, maybe on a tablet or somewhere separately, just let me give you a link to go and do that. If you have a look at my screen now, you will see the link gettalk.at/WIM5 AUGs for 5 August. So gettalk.at/WIM5 August. You can go right now and download a copy of all of my slides if you want to. I'll remind you of that link at the end of the presentation as well. That's how to connect with me a little bit later. So if that's useful for you, do that. Otherwise, just arrange your screen so that I'm as big as possible, if you like, on the screen so that you can see me and you can see the slides behind me. I'm also going to use a little software called AHA Slides for us to just interact a little bit. I'd like, obviously, in this format, and given the number of people we're expecting, I hope once everybody's signed in, a couple of hundred people on the webinar, so we can't be completely interactive. But if you haven't used Mentimeter or AHA Slides before, I hope you enjoy this. Some of you are already doing it. So go to ahaslides.com/WIM, or just scan that QR code that you can see on the screen now. That'll take you to the same place. And then thank you very much. You're answering the question. This is just to make sure you can use the system. Just let me show you what's happening in the background while you're doing this. We're developing a word cloud there. So this is just as each of you fill in your company name, it just adds that company name to the list, and it's just putting it in a fun little format. So if there's a few of you from the same company, that word cloud will increase the size. So I think BASF at the moment look as if they've got the most people. Evelop. Who else have we got coming in here? Denso, Cargill. Welcome, everybody. Please don't be shy. I can see in the bottom corner there how many people have actually done this at the moment. So get into it, because I'm going to ask you a few other questions as we go along this afternoon. And I would like you to be interactive. I hope you've just given yourself this hour to just be with me and to be with this topic, and not be interrupted by other messages and emails and so on. I know some of you have to keep me in the background a little bit, but hopefully most of you can focus and interact with me. So thank you very much for that. We're going to be talking about adaptability and leading change, about adaptive intelligence, if you like, or change intelligence, and how to build that into our DNA. Obviously, we're living at one of the most disruptive times in history, certainly in our lifetimes, probably the most disruptive time any of us have experienced, and certainly our organizations. And what I want to suggest to you this afternoon is three things. First of all, I want to suggest that this COVID disruption could actually be something of a gift to us. I know it's a disaster. I know it's massively disruptive. I know some of you are battling with health and family members, so I don't want to downplay the negative side of this, but there is a gift in forcing us to become adaptable, forcing us to deal with disruption. So that's the first thing I want to show you, that we could move maybe from a crisis mindset to an opportunity mindset. The second thing is I want to show you what change intelligence or adaptive intelligence looks like. A model of 4 things that you can start working on right now. Those 4 things will help you to deal with the disruption you're in and the crisis you're in at the moment. But the third thing is that those 4 things will also set you up for success in the rest of the 2020s. And I'm going to take you through those 3 pieces of value, I think, to you, and then we'll have a chance for Q&A. So as Stacey said, anytime during my presentation, please go back to Zoom and use the Q&A box there to put in any questions you have, and we'll leave enough time at the end to pick up hopefully quite a few questions from you and interact with you that way. If we're talking about adaptability and dealing with change and constant change, my mind goes back to Charles Darwin. And here, keep that AHA Slides page open, because I actually, we're going to have a quick competition now in a second. In a second, I'm going to push the presentation on your mobile phone or on your browser to the next question, and it's kind of fastest finger first, if you like, to see who responds. Because I think Charles Darwin is very famous for a phrase that probably all of us know, and I just want you to complete this sentence, right? Famously, are you ready? Are you ready on AHA Slides? Charles Darwin famously said, "It's the survival of the." Go to AHA Slides, quickly put, there we go. Oh, wow, now you're really coming in here. And you're all saying the same thing. That's exactly what I thought you'd say, because that's exactly what our science teachers taught us at school, right? Except Charles Darwin never said that. In fact, he said the opposite of that. He said it wasn't about who was the fittest or the most intelligent. So some of you should phone your schools and see if you can get a refund at this late stage. Because what Charles Darwin actually said is that it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change. Now, of course, your science teacher is going to argue and say, yes, but the fittest is probably the most responsive to change. And it doesn't help, it doesn't harm you to be intelligent. It doesn't harm you to be sexy or whatever your species needs. But the actual issue is adaptability. And we are living at a moment in human history where we are dealing with serious change, deep disruptive change in every part of our lives. And by the way, this is not a COVID message, right? COVID is obviously a deep disruption, but we were experiencing disruptions before COVID came along. And we were expecting the 2020s to be a very disruptive decade before we'd even heard of COVID. I mean, we've got disruptions coming our way in many of your industries, especially obviously in manufacturing. You've got automation and robotics and artificial intelligence. You can add to that machine learning and mobility and cloud. Then you can talk about, many of you in manufacturing are having to deal with sustainability issues and climate change. Did you hear, for example, that 2 weeks ago, Paris in France had a mayoral election? They re-elected their current mayor, and her primary platform was around sustainability. Paris will be hosting the Olympics in 2024, and the mayor has committed Paris to being plastic-free for the Olympics. Sorry, I should have warned you. Some of you have just fainted. Because how would you change your industry to be plastic free in the next 4 years? These are some of the disruptions that are coming our way with sustainability and climate change. And there's a good example there. I think that what COVID has done for us is accelerate some of these trends. I'll give you a few examples a little later in the presentation. But for now, I think the sustainability issue might be a good example of something accelerating. There are a lot of people who are going to be saying, hey guys, you dealt with COVID very quickly. You know, the whole world got together, thought stuff through, did things in response, got the science sorted. Yeah, we argued a little bit about a few things along the way, but within a few months, we pretty much worked out what's right to do, how do we do it, what's the science, get it sorted. Why are we taking so long with sustainability? What's up with climate change and how long that takes? Action, just like the mayor of Paris is doing right now. And so I think that we are in for a decade where a lot of these disruptive forces that were coming our way are actually going to come our way even faster. None of those other disruptions have said, oh, COVID is here. We'll give you a gap. We'll go away for a while and we'll come back when COVID is over. I think the opposite is likely to happen. So won't you go back to AHA's slides again? And let me just do this by way of interaction. What disruptors is your business going to face in the rest of the 2020s? So imagine COVID is history now. We've dealt with COVID, however long that takes. I think we've got another year or two of dealing with deep disruption about COVID. I think everywhere in the world, we're going to see second and third waves. It's already happening. Melbourne is locking down today. As we talk, Melbourne has gone back to full lockdown. Spain is about to do the same. France might go similar. Some of your states, wherever you are, you've got similar issues at the moment. But let's ignore that. Ignore COVID. There might be lasting legacies of COVID, but what are some of the other disruptors that you're dealing with? And thanks, some of you are diving in there already. So we've got climate change, we've got travel, interesting personal connections. I think that's interesting. I suppose this whole shift towards virtual, we're doing it because of COVID at the moment, but maybe some industries are going to think we can keep this. Some companies are going to say, don't ever come back to the office. Some conferences are never going to go back face to face again. I think you're right. There might be a loss, and that links into travel, which looks like most of you are saying travel is going to be a massive disruptor and change. I was speaking to an airline recently. Boeing is one of my clients, and a number of airlines around the world use our services. And one of the airlines was saying just 2 or 3 weeks ago, saying they have a plan to get rid of economy class because they think that it would be a really good proposition to say to people, you can do physical distancing on the airplane. We remove the middle seat. We give you that extra leg room. So we keep the physical distancing on the airplane. They're expecting less people to travel anyway in the future. And those people who do travel, they're expecting are probably going to be prepared to pay a little bit more. So they're shifting their airline, or thinking of shifting a few of the routes that they fly to business class only, basically, or sort of like a premium economy. There's a lasting legacy, right, of what COVID might be doing to shift an industry completely. Wow, what a great list. Stacey, you know what I'm actually going to do, because this is a fantastic list and we can actually share this with everybody. So while I keep talking, why don't you go ahead and just carry on adding to that, and we'll make sure that we actually share this with you afterwards if it's of interest to you, so that you can see what you as a group of people are seeing as some of the deep disruptors, and maybe there's some things there that you and your team, you and your company need to be thinking about. You know, for me, one of the biggest issues that we're facing at the moment with the COVID disruption is I think too many people are in sprint mode at the moment. I'm a runner, not a very good runner, but I am a runner, and a few years ago I kind of got into running. I haven't run my whole life. I started when I got into my 40s. And surprised myself. I got up very quickly to a few miles, and then added, and eventually was doing half marathons, and a year or two ago decided to push myself, see if I could do a marathon. And I actually got into the London Marathon for 2020. I was super excited. It's at the end of April, and of course it was cancelled, which is a huge disappointment. But as I was preparing for the London Marathon, which would have been my first big international marathon, I asked for advice from seasoned runners. Now, those of you who are seasoned runners, you will know what advice I got, because every single seasoned runner gave me the same advice. I'm sure you know what it is. Don't start too quickly. In your first few marathons, in any marathon, I suppose, the danger is you're as fit as you've ever been, you're excited, you've trained, you're ready to go, there's adrenaline pumping, and you rush off too quickly. And if you do that, you'll discover that you probably won't be able to finish the marathon. You'll run out of puff way before the end. I think that's where many of us are at the moment. We've done brilliantly in the last few months to handle the COVID disruption, to deal with what's been thrown at us. But we've been running at a sprint pace. And I think many of us in the last few weeks have begun to realize you can't just power through this and it'll be over, by fall. It's not going to happen, right? I think it's becoming clear to all of us. We're in this disruption for the long haul. And what that means is we can't keep responding in a crisis mindset, in a crisis mode. I mean, literally you can't. I think you'll wear yourself out. And I think a lot of us are feeling the physical and mental and emotional effects of this. And that for me is what I set up at the top of this. I think there's a gift available to us here if we're prepared to take it. The gift of learning how to be adaptable. COVID has forced us into a situation where we have to adapt. We have no choice. But here's this wonderful list. I mean, 116 of you have put bits of info, or there's 116 contributions here to this list of disruptors. Thank you for interacting with me this way. Almost every one of these that I can see, from supply chain disruptions to business development, from new technologies to automation, all of these things are going to require us to adapt. Some of them possibly have the possibility of being as deeply disruptive to your life, to your industry, as COVID is right now. So shouldn't we take the opportunity? We're sort of surviving a crisis here, right? But if we step back a second, we might recognize that we're actually learning how to deal with disruption. We're learning skills that we're going to need for the rest of the 2020s. And that's why we thought this session on being adaptable and leading change and leading and adapting to the environment would be so important for you. And I'm really glad that so many people have signed up. And hopefully those who can't join us live will pick up the recording later. So our team at my company Tomorrow Today, we set out actually a few years ago, recognizing in advance that the 2020s were going to be so deeply disruptive. We set out to find a model of adaptability to help people like yourselves to be prepared. I mean, the best time to prepare for the COVID disruption was about 2 years ago. Okay, we didn't. The second best time is now, right? So this is the point I'm making about the gift that COVID can give us, is this ability in the moment, in a crisis way, but you can still learn these skills. So we went looking for a model, and we were surprised to discover a fascinating model. I can reference the authors. Gunderson and Holling are two evolutionary biologists, and they were studying coral reefs. And they realized that coral reefs, which are a remarkable system of adaptability and constant change, that there were 4 things going on the coral reef that made the coral reef adaptable, resilient, even words we might use in the business phrase, agile, flexible, and so on. And so we've adapted their model, and we've used business language again to talk about these 4 areas that make up adaptive intelligence. And that's the heart of what I want to share with you this afternoon. So if you're taking notes, here are the 4 aspects of adaptive intelligence, or change intelligence if you prefer that. The first is accepting that change and uncertainty is the default setting. You know, for many of us, we're desperate to get back to normal, right? To try and get back to what normal is. I think it's a huge cliche people are using, the new normal. I don't like it. How about this? I think that no normal is the new normal. I don't think there's a normal to go back to. Even if we could, honestly, some of the stuff that was normal, I don't want to go back to anyway. Are any of you really missing your rush hour commute to the office and back? You might be missing the office, but are you missing the commute? I doubt it. So there's some stuff that we don't really want to go back to. And what the best adaptable organisms have, their main characteristic is that change is the default setting. They don't expect everything to stay the same until we have a change process. They expect everything to change. And when it's not changing, they actually get a little bit upset and nervous. So accepting change and uncertainty is the first aspect. The second is inviting learning. These are organisms that are constantly, in biology, we would call it evolving. So they're learning new skills and putting aside old skills. They're deciding what they need to change, what they need to do in order to develop and grow. They're inviting learning. The third thing that they do is embrace difference. They are not single organisms. They are a system of organisms that are different, that rely on each other, that are symbiotic and work together. And then finally, they give up control. So I've said they give control away, but actually in reality, there isn't control in the system. Those birds that you saw flying there, I think it's called murmurations. Who's in charge? When a school of fish suddenly change direction, you've seen National Geographic. It's remarkable. Who's the boss, right? Who takes a lead there? Who's the supervisor? Who's the manager? They don't have those systems. And maybe we can learn something from them. So let's look at each of these four issues separately and just say, what does this actually mean for you? What are the practical skills? If that's a framework, which hopefully makes sense just on the surface, what does it actually mean for you, and what are some of the things you can actually do? So the first thing then is for us to accept that change and uncertainty is normal. We knew that disruptions were coming. And in fact, some people knew that COVID was coming. Not specifically, but President Obama, for example, whenever he was asked, Mr. President, what keeps you up at night? His answer was always a global pandemic. And when he handed over to President Trump, his team briefed them on a global pandemic. They are required by law to brief on the thing they are most concerned about. And Donald Trump thought it was going to be nuclear war with North Korea. President Obama said it's actually a global pandemic. Bill Gates has said the same thing 5 years ago. Many futurists, including myself actually, I wrote a book 15 years ago in which I said I thought one of the big four things that could seriously impact the world, one of those was a global pandemic. If you're interested, you can ask for the other three. We'll talk about them in Q&A. Now, I'm not saying I predicted it. I'm not saying I said it would happen at the beginning of the 2020s and so on. But it's not as if we didn't know that this could happen. So why don't we see things coming? Why is it that even though we know disruption is going to happen all the time, why does it constantly surprise us? Why do supply chain disruptions? Why do new competitors? Why do quality issues constantly surprise you in your organization? I think there are three reasons. And knowing these reasons, we would be able to deal with them. So the first reason actually comes from one of my mentors and gurus, Professor Jim Data, who's based at the University of Hawaii. I think one of the world's leading futurists. And he has a number of laws of futures studies. He trains futurists in the formal study of studying the future. And he argues that one of the biggest problems we have in our organizations is we don't have enough ridiculous ideas. And that sounds crazy, but let me explain. We tend to focus on only the things we can explain. We tend to focus on only the things that are in our plans and within our controls. And we don't take enough time when we are thinking about our plans and when we are thinking about our work, we don't take enough time to think, what are some of the crazy disruptive things that could happen? Now, from a strategy point of view, there's also a very positive thing to do, and that is that when we're thinking about our strategies, we often don't push ourselves to say, what's at the edge of our technology? What's at the edge of our capabilities as a business? Let me show you a video. Stacy said we're going to watch a video or two. Here's the first one. So just in case the volume's not quite right, just make sure you've got your finger near the volume control. Have a look at, this is something that SpaceX is doing, right? So you know Elon Musk, he's legendarily crazy. He's trying to build a colony on Mars. He's putting spaceships up into space. People said he couldn't do it. He said, let's see if we can do reusable rockets. And people said, that's not possible. And then he did it. And people are saying, no, you can't build a space station on Mars. And he's going to say, well, let's try anyway. What's he really trying to do? Here's what I think he's really trying to do. Have a look. Ridiculous, right? Anywhere on earth in under an hour. London to New York, 29 minutes. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not ridiculous. Maybe it's only ridiculous because we haven't done it yet. And maybe it's only ridiculous because we haven't created a space in our organizations to think of ridiculous ideas. Not all ridiculous ideas are useful. Some of them are just plain crazy. But some ridiculous ideas give us information about what might happen and help us to plan scenarios for how we might respond. The second thing that I think gets in our way of making good decisions is, this is actually an old thing. I'm sure most of you have seen it. It's credited normally to Dwight Eisenhower, the decision matrix, right? And it's about deciding between important and not important things, and urgent and not urgent things. So things that are urgent and important, well, we need to do them, right? And you should do them now. Things that are urgent but not important are the things that waste your time the most. You know, other people's lack of planning becomes your crisis. And I think we're finding a lot of that at the moment, aren't we? During lockdown and self-isolation. But technically, if it's urgent, but it's not important to you, you should find who it is important to and delegate it to them. Things that are not important and not urgent, you shouldn't do at all. You should just delete them. And then Eisenhower's model says that the things that are important and not urgent are actually one of the most important things for you to focus your attention on, because they don't have that urgency. They're not pushing their way up your to-do list, but they are important. And you should decide. Problem is, in reality, you have a wonderful phrase. For those of you who haven't placed my accent yet, I'm South African British. I've got a home in Johannesburg, which is where I'm locked down, and a base in London as well, and I move between the two. I'm not sure dither is a word we use often, anywhere actually. If we did use it, it would be in England, I suppose. But dithering is about just, you've got a better way of phrasing it in America. You kick the can down the road, right? That's what often happens with stuff that's actually important, but it's not urgent. And I think this happens all the time in our businesses, is we know there's something, there's disruption coming. You know that robotics is coming to your manufacturing line. You know that automation is on its way. You know that artificial intelligence and data analytics is on its way. It's important, but not urgent. Next year, next quarter, somebody else's problem. This is why we get into trouble, because we don't deal with the important stuff. We often are just at the tyranny of the urgent. The third reason that we miss things, and the third reason that we don't accept change, is because of inattentional blindness. That's not unintentional blindness, so it's not just missing stuff. It's the fact that we don't even know what we're supposed to see. If you're not looking at your screen, please look at it now. What shapes do you see? You don't have to type this anywhere, just say it to yourself. I don't need your feedback. What shapes can you see? Most people will see rectangles, possibly a few squares, some lines. Do you see any triangles anywhere? I don't think so. You might have been drinking a bit if you're seeing triangles. But can you see the circles? Can you see the circles? Now, for some of you, as soon as I've said that they're circles, you can see them now, can't you? For some of you, you need a bit of help. Here's help. In fact, there's circles everywhere here. There's literally circles all over the place. I mean, you can count them if you want to. There are more than 20 of them. But this is what I mean by inattentional blindness. What we see is very much influenced by our history, by what we've seen before. And because those rectangles are the way that lines normally work, they're much easier to see until you know that there are circles there. Then you'll see them every time. And this is the same in our world, in our life around us. That what we see in our industries, in our jobs, in our day-to-day lives is influenced by our personality, our culture, our gender, even our religion. And all of these things get in our way. as we look at the world around us. And so what we need to do is accept that maybe the way we see the world and maybe the way we engage with the world is not the way that the world actually is, and that there's more to see. Now, actually, as it happens, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this in my next session next month. So if you haven't signed up yet for September 16th, same time, same place, sign up. We're going to talk about a model of looking at the future, a model of getting a broader perspective on how we see trends and disruptions and forces. And we're going to come back to this topic in a little bit more detail in next month. So make sure that you come back for that. But that's the first part of this model of adaptive intelligence. How open are you to change? How much do you have your radar switched on to see change coming? And then you need to ask, are you inviting learning? So some of what you see will stretch you. Some of you will push you beyond what you're comfortable with, beyond what you're familiar with. You know, one of the things we are desperate for in our lives is certainty. We, as human beings, we're not designed to deal with uncertainty. We want certainty in the system, but actually, we've got to get used to uncertainty. A book I've read during lockdown, which I highly recommend to you, is Catherine Schultz's Being Wrong. Adventures in the Margin of Error. It's a beautiful, magnificent book that everybody should read. She talks about the fact that we need to learn to be wrong. Being wrong is essential for learning. If you're not prepared to acknowledge you're wrong, you will never learn or change. And when we do that, when we change, we revise our views of the world around us, and we revise our views of ourselves. And this is what inviting learning is. It's recognizing that some of what I have believed, some of what is happening around me is unfamiliar to me, and I need to learn. I might even have been wrong. Maybe I was right a year or two ago, but because circumstances have changed, because the world has changed, maybe I need to change as well. That's a big thing. Good grief, we could spend hours and hours talking about what that feels like and how to do it. But what it really is at its heart is our ability to accept that we've still got stuff to learn, that we might be wrong, and that we should always be in learning mode. The third area is to embrace difference. And of course, in fact, in your schedule, there are people who talk about diversity, and it's such a huge and important and big topic that it deserves a lot of time and attention. So I can't give it everything that it needs now, except to say that this is absolutely essential. That we don't just deal with diversity as if it's a problem to be solved. We don't come at diversity as if it's a quota to be checked off. We must embrace the fact that other people are different, and we must engage with that difference. I am a father of 3 daughters and a husband of a wife. I'm the only male in the house, and my 3 teenage daughters, in fact, 2 now young adults and a teenager. I've loved watching them grow up and seeing the world through their eyes and learning from them about what it's like to go beyond accepting that people are different and moving towards inclusion and engagement. You know, a number of years ago, we were sitting at the breakfast table and I told my daughters, I'm so excited for my day. I'm headed off to a women's conference. There'll be hundreds of women at this conference center. I will be the only man speaking on the day. Don't know how that happened, but I was the only man. And I said to them, I'm so excited. The energy in the room when you've got a whole lot of women together is very different from when there's mixed or men only. Something special about it. And I love that energy. And I was so excited. I got nothing from the table. Wife, daughters looked at me as if I was crazy. And then my oldest daughter, Amy, said, Dad, you do understand, right, that if one of us women was going to spend the whole day as the only woman with a group of men, we'd be scared. You do get that, right? Whew. Wow. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. There's just stuff that men don't understand about what it's like to be a woman. And then Amy, when I got home that day, said, Dad, you have to watch this. This will help you. Here's another video. It starts a little bit soft, so again, have your finger on the volume button.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do. Just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh my God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out, and when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it, because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. Doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that is not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm gonna do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Yeah.
I always need a moment after I've watched that. Here's a model to help you. You see, I think a lot of what we try and do in our organizations is get variety. We want to tick off all the different types of diversity just for the sake of it. What we really need is something else. Variety is like having a zoo, right? You got a whole lot of different animals. You want one or two of each type. You get them all together, you tick them off, and you make sure that you've got them. But here's the problem, right? They have to be kept separate. They're in different cages. Otherwise, they'd kill each other, literally. What you're really looking for is an ecosystem where everybody, every diverse entity that comes to the system can be who they are. I hope I've raised my daughters to be like girls, which means being the best that they can be. And we don't need variety of the zoo. We need the diversity of the ecosystem. So again, there's lots more that could be said and lots of people who probably say it better than I do. But if we're going to be good at being adaptive, what we need to do is we need to connect with people who see the world differently to us, who engage with things differently to us, and we need to embrace that, not see it as a threat or a problem. The final part of this model is about giving up control. And this is really where we get to the leadership aspect. This is the most difficult thing in this model. But unexpected disruption and unpredictability, VUCA if you like, necessitates agility, adaptability. And that can only happen if you're not controlling. If I can give you one more book recommendation, I hope some of you are readers and are glad for book recommendations. David Marquette wrote a fantastic book called Turn the Ship Around. He was a nuclear submarine commander in the US Navy, and he trained for 2 years to take command of a submarine, a nuclear submarine. And a few months before he was supposed to take command, something happened and he was shifted to a different submarine entirely. He arrived then at this new submarine without actually knowing precisely what he should do as a commander. You'd think that was a problem, right? He did. And his story, if you're not a reader, he's done a brilliant 15-minute TED Talk. Just do a search for David Marquette, Turn the Ship Around. It's brilliant and well worth 15 minutes of your time. He suggests 3 things that you can do. And this is what he did on a nuclear submarine, and it's giving up control. The first thing you've got to do is you and your team have got to be clear on what needs to be done. By purpose, I don't mean your vision, mission, values, purpose. I mean your purpose for today, for this week, for this quarter, for this year. Does everybody in your team really understand exactly what must be done, why it must be done, why it must be done by them? Make sure, as the leader of the team, that everybody's clear on that purpose. If they are, the second thing you can do, and this is the clever bit, is instead of giving them instructions and telling them what to do, you can ask them, what do you intend to do? So in the submarine, the purpose is we have to get the submarine to this location in the ocean within the next 3 days. So we're heading out of the port and we're heading there. If everybody understands where we're going, how we plan to get there, why we have to get there, then the commander can simply say to the helmsman, to the engine master, what do you intend to do? And then the helmsman will say, I intend to set a course 360 degrees north or wherever. And the engine can say, I intend to go full speed for the next 12 hours. And the commander can say, yeah, that's right, that makes sense to me. Now, if your team is not capable of doing that, that is your leadership task, is to build the competence and the organizational structure in your team in order to be able to do that. This is the leadership challenge. The role of the leader can't be to be a controlling puppet master, but has to shift to crafting a culture that is adaptive and responsive. Now, I realize this is high level. I'm sure you realized it would have to be high level. I want to get to a few minutes of Q&A before our hour is up. So there's obviously, if we were in a training program and we had the day together, we could go into detail and look at each of these areas. But hopefully this makes sense to you around how do we build adaptability? How do we engage with a constantly changing world? We need to accept and acknowledge the constant change. Put ourselves in a position where we are learning and feeling like we are learning. We're not bringing our old expertise and saying, this is the way we've always done it. We're saying maybe there are new ways to do it. Some of you have discovered that in remarkable ways during lockdown. You've had to upskill yourselves, get your home office going, get new technologies working. For some of us, it's a bit of a stress, but at other times, it's exciting because learning is something we're built to do as human beings. Then we need to engage with different people who have different ideas. That's not just gender, it's generations. It's different people with different expertise, engaging with people outside our industry. And finally, we need to move away from that control mindset and shift to an enabling mindset as we adapt and learn adaptability intelligence. Now, let me just remind you, of my contact details and where you can get a copy of these slides, and by the way, a whole lot of other resources. Obviously, WIM gives some wonderful resources, and make sure you connect into them as well. But I've made some free resources available for you at that website as well. Please just take a note or take a quick capture of the screen. And now, Stacey, I'm sure that there have been a few questions as we've gone along. There's so much to say. We definitely needed about 3 days for this topic, but I hope this has got people thinking, given people a bit of inspiration as well. What questions have we had? Is there anything that we can help people with that might be practical?
Yeah, you've definitely got people thinking. So the first one was sent really early on. What are those other 3 potential shake the world?
I wondered if anybody would be interested. And sit down for this, because any of these could happen and they'd be disastrous. The first was an asteroid strike, which would be pretty nuts. The second would be a nuclear third world war. And the fourth would be an electromagnetic pulse from a solar flare that would wipe all the world's computers clean to zero. Now, some of you have got a bank overdraft, so you're happy for the bank to lose all your records at the moment. But any of us with savings or anything else like that, that would be a disaster. So those were the other 3. Any of them are possible, sorry.
Awesome, perfect, thank you. This is another great one. I'm curious to see what you think about this. What is the best way to engage with others with fundamentally different views or values? So, for example, political views.
Yeah, and you know what? I wish I could speak to you out of a deep sense of wisdom and expertise here. I'm really struggling with this during lockdown. I've been known on my LinkedIn and Facebook profiles to be very patient, engaging with people who have differences of opinion. Lockdown, I've found it tough, and I've unfriended more people in the last 4 or 5 months than I have in the rest of my life put together, just for my own mental health. So I do want to say sometimes it's difficult, and we're in the most polarized, divided world we've ever been in. So I'm not coming as the wise sage who's getting this right. However, the actual answer to the question is there are 2 very important things you can do, and both of these are brilliant. The first is to shift to questions. So instead of coming back with an answer, come back with a question, and a question that's not designed to be a gotcha question. So it's not a question a journalist might ask somebody to try and trap them into a trick answer. It's a question where you're genuinely trying to understand, why do you see the world that way? The way you see the world is so different from how I see it. I can't even believe we live on the same planet, but we do, so help me understand. And so developing a habit of questions is really valuable. And if you're even struggling with that, then the second thing to do is to simply reflect back to the person. Almost, you've seen enough movies to know what the psychologists do. I am hearing you say. That's how you start a sentence. So if somebody says something absolutely mental, 5G towers, some of you might believe this, but I think it's mental. 5G towers are causing COVID. Then I, instead of writing back to you, say, you're absolutely mental, I've just done it, apologies. I write back and say, why do you think that's happening? I'm hearing you say that COVID might not just be a natural disease. And in doing that, you reduce the emotional content of the conversation, and you show the other person that you're at least willing to engage with them, and you try and get behind what they're actually saying to their worldview. And do it with genuine curiosity, and sometimes you'll discover they're not quite as crazy as you thought they were, and some of them have actually got a very good point, and we should have been listening to them in the first place.
Thank you, that's a great answer. Got a couple more. The next one is, what's the best way to hold others accountable when you're giving up control?
Yeah, that's a really great question. You know, that thing I gave you around what David Marquette said. Let me quickly go back to that. I had an example I skipped over, but the question allows me to go back. One of the biggest problems we have in our organizations is authority and responsibility are not well matched. So many of you have got the responsibility to do something. in the business, but you actually don't have the authority to get it done. Maybe let me move away from your particular environment. Let me speak about sales, for example. I know some of you are in sales, but a salesperson or a client relationship manager, even more, during COVID right now, has got the responsibility to go to the clients and the customers and say, what do you really need? And to come up with a plan that will work for them, work for us. And the client might say, I need a discount, or I need you to deliver more, or I need you to deliver less, or faster, or slower, or whatever. I need a change in the terms and conditions. Does that salesperson have the authority to actually then give it to the client? Probably not. The larger your organization, the less likely. They've got to come back to the office. There's a sales committee, a sales manager, a sales executive. Legal and compliance want to get involved to make sure that the contract works. Marketing wants to get involved to make sure we send the new contract on the right letterhead. And by the time we've gone back to the client, it's days later and probably not quite what either the salesman or the salesperson or the client had in mind. What we need to do is to change things. Right now, information flows to where the authority is. The authority is in the senior executives and the decision makers, and information flows up in all of our constant reports. We need to flip our organizations. If we want to be adaptable, authority has to flow to where the information is. Now, let's get to answering the question. How do you do that? Well, you can't do it overnight. You can't simply say tomorrow morning, right, everybody, you've got complete authority, good luck. You've got to do what David Marquette said. You've got to make sure that everybody is clear on the purpose. As I say, it's not mission, vision, values, purpose. It's what are we trying to achieve and why, and what would be success for our team in this moment. Then you transfer this intent. What do you intend to do? And if the person speaks back to you and says, I intend to do this, and you think that's good, well, then you're on a good wicket. You've handed responsibility to them and they feel that was my decision, so now I'm responsible for it. If they come back to you with something crazy, you've got to stop them and you've got to say, no, I think you've maybe misunderstood. And that's where the leadership comes in. So it's not just handing over responsibility and letting them do anything. You're still playing your leadership role, but you're not telling, you're asking, and you're not imposing, you're delegating. And that's the leadership task, is to work out whether that can be done. It's hard work initially, but if you get it right, it is remarkable. And that, for me, to come back to my theme, I think might be a gift of COVID, a gift that COVID gives us, because nothing's like it was. Nothing is like it used to be. So now's the time to get this clarity of purpose, transfer intent, and build competence in your team.
Great. I know we're getting close to the end. We have one question that
Sure.
I think will be a great final one.
Great.
It seems like we are usually reactive in our learning and growth. We only start to learn a topic after we need it. How can a person be proactive in thinking about what we should learn before we actually need it?
Well, Stacey, whoever asked that question has given us the wonderful opportunity to say, come back in September, because that's basically the theme of what I'm doing next month for you, is to say we have to spend at least a portion of our time, not all day, every day, but a portion of our time scanning the horizon so that we get exactly into that proactive mode. But I wanted, just let me finish. I know we're coming up against the top of the hour. Give me 1 minute to just conclude in this way. Imagine I got a little task committee together to improve this caterpillar, right? And we wanted to improve this caterpillar. How would we do it? Well, if we were caterpillars and we were a little bit nervous of being eaten, we might say, make it smaller, make it leaner, meaner, faster, less colorful, don't want the birds to notice it. If we were an artist, we might say, make it bigger, plumper, more colorful, look better in a photograph. Some of you are ahead of me. You know where I'm going, because obviously a better caterpillar is a butterfly. And I think that one of the biggest problems that many of us face right now, and it does answer this last question, and it summarizes nicely what we've said for the last hour. Too many of us are focused on trying to get back to normal after this COVID crisis. I think that's a mistake. I don't think there's a normal to go back to. There's only the future that's coming. I think too many of us, forget COVID, too many of us have been focused on just trying to improve what we already do. And we're missing what the 2020s are going to demand of us, which is to not just be better at what we used to do, not just be a better caterpillar, but to discover the butterfly. The disruptions that are coming our way have the potential to change everything everywhere. And we have to get ahead of that game. So hopefully these 4 things we've talked about today will help you to do that, you and your team. And if you come back in September, you kind of get part 2. These 2 things go together because it will help you to see some of those disruptions more clearly. So I hope to see you in a month's time. Thanks, Stacey.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Graeme. So that will conclude our virtual learning event for today. A follow-up email will be sent to you soon that includes a link to the archived recording of today's session. Today's webinar was made possible by the Arconic